On the 25th of November, the Chancellor gave his long-awaited financial statement to the House of Commons, obviously helped and aided and given a lot of background by the OBR, the Office of Budget Responsibility. The headlines that came out of this, I'm going to remind myself by referring to this piece of paper, were not terribly encouraging. We pretty much knew about them, but when we were actually faced with the hard numbers, they made hard listening. Listen to this. The Chancellor, of course, said the health challenge isn't over, and quite rightly, the economic challenge has only just begun, possibly referencing the carpenters there. Total borrowing, 394 billion by the end of the year, 394 billion, that's 19% of GDP currently. The economy won't be back to pre-COVID levels until 2022, second quarter of 2022. The economy will be 3% smaller than it was expected to be at the time of the last budget in 2025. And then it will start to recover. Unemployment will be at 7.5% up until the second quarter next year. Scars will be felt, these are all the headlines, scars will be felt by the economy until the middle of the decade. The largest fall in GDP, that's the largest fall in GDP of 11.3% in 300 years, so the largest fall in centuries. And the important GDP debt relationship, that is the underlying debt, not just the borrowing this year, the total underlying debt, GDP underlying debt relationship will be around 100%. So the underlying debt will equate to 100% of what we produce in a year. Unprecedented, as I've said before, no, not. We've been in this position before. But what does that mean in relation to taxation? Well, the Institute of Fiscal Studies have said that we'll need about 40 billion a year extra at some point, and that's key, at some point, to close that gap. The International Monetary Fund and the IFS have both said, absolutely not now, though. Carry on supporting the economy, which I think is a message we all would go along with. Carry on supporting the economy, keep stimulating, don't take money out of the economy by high taxation now. But at some point, we need to get our public finances back to a more stable footing to repair public finances. What does that mean for taxation? We don't know yet. What we do know is at the moment, and I've said this before, I'll say it again, the three main generators of tax in the UK are undoubtedly income tax, VAT and NIC, producing almost £500 billion a year between them. So ideally, you'd say if your motivation is to get money in, you'd be applying a small increase to each of those tax. So it's not to massively diminish the economy, to each of those gatherings in of revenue, income tax, VAT and NIC, to get you that money in quickest. But we are hampered, of course, by the commitment pre-election of the government to not increase any of those taxes. But of course, they may look again at that. Corporation tax only generates but just under 50 billion this year, and we do need to remain competitive post-Brexit. And then the capital taxes, which got quite a lot of discussion but don't generate a whole lot of tax, 10 to 15 billion between them, have been posted for review. The Office of Tax Simplification, as I've mentioned before in other videos and bulletins, of course, have already been reviewed, and we could see some change there. And again, I've said it before, but the change may be slightly more likely because it will appear to be fair and not that many people pay the tax. So if you increase the tax, it won't upset that many people. Lots to think about here. Even pensions, of course, can't stop without mentioning pensions. It does cost 40 billion. The Public Accounts Committee did ask very recently the government to review pensions tax relief. And at the time of being asked, which was only a few months ago, the government said, not just yet. However, it's a big number, and in the light of needing to be more effective with your spending, and tax relief is a form of spending, giving money away, then it may be something that will be looked at. You'd expect it to be at some point. And of course, on the spending front, the government have already committed to a freeze on targeted public sector wages. So lots more to think about, lots more to wait to think about, because we can only just think about it at the moment, and we don't know what's actually happening. We'll know a bit more next year, and we don't expect to see dramatic tax rises imminently, but they have to happen at some time. And that does set the scene fair, as it were, for financial advice incorporating a high element of effective tax planning. We, of course, will be keeping you well up to date with all of our Techlink bulletins.